Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we are doing something that I promised you I will do. And finally the day has come. We're gonna do a tier list of Resident Evil games, all the Resident Evil games that I have played. How fun is that? So let's dive right into it. I don't think we need too much introductions. I'm only gonna say that we are rating today 12 Resident Evil games, the 12 games that I did play. Actually, I played all of those games on the channel, I think, except for Resident Evil 2. This one I played a few months before creating the channel, but the rest of them you can find the playthrough on the channel. What is not here, we should have a moment of silence for it. Code Veronica, I know so many of you told me how much you love Code Veronica, how great this game is, but I'm playing on PC. There is no PC release of Code Veronica, so yeah, there are rumors about a remake, let's hope. And that being said, let's go. Also, by the way, we have Resident Evil 1, 2, 3 remakes. I did play the remakes, I did not play the originals. So I, started playing Resident Evil so late, so that's why you don't see the OGs. Anyways, Resident Evil 1, let's begin with this one. That's the remake of Resident Evil 1, which was so good. Loved it. So I kinda, thinking about Resident Evil 1, I'm kinda considering, should it be S tier or A tier? It's definitely up there. It's one of those two. So thinking about S tier, I'm thinking, is it perfect in every single way, or it has its lower points? I'm thinking it's near perfect, but it's not quite there. So let's begin by telling you why I love Resident Evil 1 so much. First of all, I always keep saying that even though I love the Resident Evil action type of gameplay, I always thought that Capcom is at its best with a survival horror. That's Resident Evil that is always peaking for me. So that's one good point. Also, this is the game that introduced the series in general. I mean, not this specifically, this is the remake, but this is a remake of the original, which introduced the series of Resident Evil to us, to the gaming world. And also, I should mention that I'm so impressed by the character list that this game introduced into us. So you got Jill, you got Chris, you have also Rebecca, you have Wesker, Barry, of course, which later comes in Revelations 2. So, that's an impressive cast of characters. So many memorable characters, and one of the strongest of the series altogether. Graphics were good, puzzles were fantastic, the survival horror element, you never feel safe, which I love in survival horror. I think that's how survival horror always should be, managing, the limited ammunition and all that. Yeah, lovely level design. But, and here's the but, and this is why I'm thinking this one is going to A tier and not S tier. I'm thinking that Resident Evil 1 got some clunkiness in the mechanics, and that's something I noticed right away. It takes some time to get used to. Once you get used to it, it's far better, but still it's there. Considering the fact that it's an older game, you should be more forgiving, but still, I think it is too noticeable to be an S tier. Still, when we're talking about A tier, it's a fantastic game, but this one prevents it from being S tier. Plus, you should mention, even though it's amusing at times, the voice acting were not good at this game. That's especially considering later installments. That actually was in ways a little bit amusing, so I did not mind it too much, but mostly the clunkiness in the mechanics. It was not that smooth, but again, A tier, so I love this game, don't get me wrong. So it's up there, it's close to S. Talking about S tier, Resident Evil 2 Remake goes to S tier without a doubt. So yeah, this one goes up here, and I can talk endlessly about Resident Evil 2 Remake. First of all, it got this sentimental element for me because that's the game that introduced me to the franchise. As I said, I started playing Resident Evil 2 so late in the game. That's the first Resident Evil I ever tried, and after playing this one, I told myself, how come I did not play Resident Evil before? Because I was blown away. if I'm looking hard, very hard, for something that I don't like about this game, I cannot find it. It's just not there. So, graphics, beautiful. Survival horror elements, scary, terrifying in a good way. The mechanics were smooth, unlike Resident Evil 1. The mechanics felt to me in this remake smooth. You know, it's newer, so you have better technological capabilities, so maybe it's easier, but still, you need to get good mechanics, and they did it. They did it. You have amazing characters. Considering all the amazing characters you have in Resident Evil 1, they created a second game with a whole new cast of characters, but still they managed somehow to get everyone to be so good. You're introduced to Leon, to Claire, Ada Wong, the famous Ada Wong, Mr. X, the X Factor, in a way, also Sherry. So an amazing cast of characters that took a risk after Resident Evil 1, and after people, you know, already love those characters, Jill and Chris, and they took a chance of a whole new character into the mix, and it just worked. Because Capcom, it's an amazing company of devs and talented people, period. And just, there is nothing that bothered me. I just had fun all the time playing this game. And I should mention how amazing the maze-like level design of the police station. I think in terms of the level design, this is probably, even though it's not my favorite game in the series altogether, it's close, but it's not their favorite. I think it has the best level design out of all of the games in the series. That's for me at least. I mean, the puzzle in this maze-like police station was just perfect. It's perfect. It's a perfect game. It's a perfect survival horror. So after all the compliments and after saying so many good things about Resident Evil titles, let's take it down a notch and talk about Resident Evil 3 Remake, which is not as good. It is, okay, it is good. I loved it, but definitely not as good as those two. So Resident Evil 3 Remake, it's interesting what happened there, because it got the same amazing graphics of 2. We got Jill back, a character that you already love, and she's great in this game. I love the new model of Jill. She looks beautiful and all that, but more than that, her character is interesting. And you got Carlos, which is a good character all in all. However, couple of things. First of all, the fact that it is short. So I did not play the original Resident Evil 3, but I heard from a lot of people. By the way, that's why, because I did not play the original, it did not feel that short to me. It's definitely not a long game, but it did not feel that short. However, I heard from people how much juice was cut off from the original, and that kind of upset me as someone who did not play the original. I kind of felt, man, I want to experience all those things, and I feel like I did not have the chance to experience it because Capcom cut it off. And you must admit that Capcom did charge like a full price of a heavy AAA title for a game that is shorter. So you did expect they won't cut off a lot of things from the original, but they did. So again, I did not play the original, but it kind of upsets me that I did not manage to experience those things. And yeah, the game was just cut short dramatically. And also I should mention, comparing to Resident Evil 2 and 1, I think there was a bit of a downgrade in some of the areas level design. If I talked about Resident Evil 2, that got this amazing maze-like police station. Actually, you did visit the police station in 3, but the new location that you explore in Resident Evil 3, although enjoyable, not coming close to the level design for me of Resident Evil 2, and not even 1. In 1, the mansion, all that, exploring the mansion, it is such an experience. So it's not up there with those two titles that we just talked about. So I think 3 should go lower, but not too low, because still, Jill is an amazing character, and it was fun, and the graphics and the mechanics were all in all very good. So, you know, that's a B for me. That's a B tier. Okay, let's talk about 4. Oh my god, such a fantastic title. So, you know, Capcom took so many risks with 4. First of all, you know, let me spoil it for you, it's going all the way to S tier. Now, Capcom took so many risks with Resident Evil 4. First of all, they decided to go to to a different direction in terms of gameplay. They went action mode. It's way more action than horror. It is scary at a lot of parts, it is, but it's mostly action. And you should mention the fact that by this point, after Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, fans are expecting something. So when Capcom decide to go action, they know they're gonna upset some players, so they're taking a risk. However, they did it so good, and the game was just so enjoyable that the risk, I think, it was worth it. And it was just a fantastic experience. And remember, I'm playing Resident Evil so late in the game. I did play this game only lately, I don't remember, a couple of years ago on the channel, and I was blown away. It was just so good. And such an old game, I just enjoyed it so much. So they did not only refresh the action, they also changed the atmosphere altogether. Going out of Raccoon City, they felt like after 3 titles, they want to do something different. So they did it, and they were successful in it. And they brought Leon back and Ada back. I'm guessing they did not want to go, off track too much and keep something that players will find recognizable. So they brought characters that we know, but they also introduced some of the most memorable characters in the series. Annoying Ashley, which was also funny, and Sadler, Salazar, and just, again, amazing cast. Like almost every single title, you got amazing cast of characters to enjoy. And the village idea was just brilliant, I think. Going into this village, everybody's infected, and changing the locations, and the humor that was introduced for the first time, and it went along pretty well with the action and the change of vibes. So, yeah, I just love every single thing this game had to offer. Just loved every single thing. So S tier, easy choice, don't have to think twice. If you're seeing a lot of games that, all the way up there, there are games that gonna go a bit lower. I'm kinda spoiling it for you, but step by step we'll get there. Let's cut the chronological order and let's go to Revelations for a second, to the first Revelations. Now, I'm saying it's gonna get a bit of a lower score, but don't get me wrong, it's a good game. But I'm gonna get it all the way down to C. Before you're gonna hate me for this, I'm gonna explain. So, Resident Evil Revelations, it's a good game. It brought back Jill, got a good story, and got some scary moments. And the entire idea of spending most of the time in that ship, I think it was just really, really good. It was good and it worked. So why such a low score comparing to the other titles? Because 2 things that I cannot ignore. The 3D map was the worst map in the series from the games I've played, it's definitely the worst map. I hated the 3D map. I don't hate almost nothing in the Resident Evil series, but I managed to hate the 3D map. Second thing, the scanning mechanics, it was not for me. I got used to it eventually, but if you saw my playthrough on the channel, I did complain a lot about the scanning. And it's kinda upsetting me because Revelation, those 2 things aside, it was such a good game, and I love the story. And even the new model of Jill, I liked it and all that, so it got so many good things in it. It was just really, really good. But again, those 2 things, the 3D map and the scanning, takes it down all the way to C. I mean, if you take those things aside, if those things were fixed or changed, it was an A for me because it was just a good game altogether, except those 2 things. So that's too bad. However, you should compliment Capcom for Revelations 2. Revelations 2 was everything Revelation was, but without those disadvantages. No 3D map and the scanning mechanics, they throw it away thankfully. So that is going all the way up to A. And also the story of Barry, introducing Moira. Those were amazing characters in this game, and their story and their connection was everything. And Claire is just awesome. Revelations 2 was just so good. It was so good. I love every second of it. Oh man, kind of talking about it makes me want to go and play it again. Just love Revelations 2. So, yeah, look at us go. And let's go back. Well, we're going back to 4, but not really. That's the newest title of the series. Basically, it's the newest title, but it's 4, so, you know. Anyways, I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it, but just like the original 4, this one also goes to S tier. And Capcom, you're amazing. I mean, taking such a classic and managing to get the remake to be perfect in every single way. I don't know how they did it, but they did. So they did not make it identical to the original. They introduced a few new elements, the brokeable knife all of a sudden. So they managed to add some elements that feeling a bit refreshed. Ashley's character was actually improved in every single way. And I did not expect that to happen, but it did. The gameplay was smoother than the original Resident Evil 4. Of course, the graphics, it was just a stunning game. And of course, Separate Ways DLC, just like in the, by the way, the original 4, I did not talk about it. Just like the original 4, in the new 4, they had Separate Ways, which again was just so good. I mean, Resident Evil 4 and 4 Remake, perfect games in every single way. They took down a notch the comical moments, but still, they brought more horror elements. It was a bit scarier than the OG 4, so it was a bit different, so it was perfect in its own way, not exactly like the original, but a great game altogether. Oh, by the way, talking about the 4 Remake, I should mention that Resident Evil 2 Remake, I forgot to talk about it while putting it on S tier. In a way, also a compliment for Capcom. I think that in Resident Evil 2, they sort of show us how a remake is done right, and they also, in a way, legitimize the creation of remakes of video games. Now, I know some people say there are too many, like the remake scene is oversaturated. Nowadays, there are too many remakes, but I don't think so, because it's not like Capcom ditched new stories and only doing remakes now. While developing Resident Evil 2 and 3 Remake and 4, they also brought us Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8, and they are working on Resident Evil 9, that's in production, so they are still creating new stories. So as long as the remakes, do not replace the new stories, then why not? Especially when the remakes are so good. So thank you, Capcom, for that. Resident Evil 5. Resident Evil 5, I almost thought of getting it to S tier for me. I know a lot won't agree with me, but I decided eventually to get it to A tier. I know that Resident Evil 5 got some people criticizing it for some reason, and I don't really understand why. I think it's almost as good as 4, the same action-packed vibe as 4, and it was just as good as 4. The only reason it's not S tier, there are less memorable moments, they brought in 4 so many scenes that became iconic, and the story in 5 is a bit less impressive than 4. The idea of Leon going into the village, trying to rescue the daughter of the president, and she's super annoying and all that. So many good things in 4. So in 5, it was not that good, but it was close. I think introducing Sheva was a lot of fun, amazing character. The great finale with Wesker, that was something. Punching a boulder, one of the most iconic moments in the series, punching that boulder, of course. Also, you got Excella, again, good characters. So I think Resident Evil 5 is way up there, goes to A tier list, and just enjoyed it a lot. And I think I'm gonna say similar things about 6. And I think 6 also goes to A tier, and again, people may disagree with me, but guys, I think Resident Evil 6 is a fantastic game. So Resident Evil 6, I think, got bad reviews, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of criticism. And yeah, I think Resident Evil 6, more than any game in the series, brought just pure action all the way through, like almost trashy action. But at the same time, think about characters like Pierce. I mean, what a story he has, the story of Ada and her duplicate and all that. Sherry and Jack, I mean, so many characters bringing so much amazing moments. I mean, I don't know, Resident Evil 6 for me, it was a fantastic Resident Evil game. Not as scary as other Resident Evil, and that is why I agree. That's something that it's kind of upsetting, but I think that at this point after Resident Evil shows you that we want to do action as well. After Capcom shows you we want to do action as well, you know what to expect. You know, you can get the survival horror or the action packed game. So yeah, they went full-blown action. The only reason this one is not S tier for me, it's not scary enough. But that aside, I mean, it was so enjoyable in every single way. And again, I'm just recalling some amazing story moments. And this game, for me, brought a lot of memorable moments. Yeah, Pierce, we remember you. And we appreciate what you did. Just saying. Okay, and actually the latest Resident Evil that I've played is Resident Evil 0. And Resident Evil 0, while could be just as good as 1, because those are very similar games, it fell short on multiple aspects. So unfortunately, I think Resident Evil 0 goes to C tier. And hear me out. I loved Resident Evil 0, but I mean, it's Resident Evil, like every game I love. I love every game of the Resident Evil series. There's no game that I do not love. But it does suffer from a couple of things that just makes it not as good as other titles. It's just not up there, unfortunately. So here's the thing. Rebecca shines in this game. I really enjoyed playing as Rebecca. Puzzles were good. Level design also very good. Survival horror, unlike other Resident Evils that are more action like 4 or 5, this is pure survival horror, which I think again Capcom shines when they are going for that route. However, the problem with Resident Evil 0 for me that prevented it from being B or A, it's the fact that the storage management was just a mess. So in Resident Evil 1, you have the storage room, the famous storage room. It works way better, way better. So scattered items all over the map, that is just upsetting for me. And I had a hard time with that. And that's too bad because it was close. It could have been an A for me if not for that. And also, I think, and you may gonna hate me for it, I think that Billy's character was definitely not as interesting character as a lot of other characters in the Resident Evil series. Don't hate me for it, hear me out. It had a potential. He's likable, and it had a potential, so he's accused of doing horrible things, so you begin by thinking of him as a criminal, and then the arc of this character, you are building a connection with him and all that, but at the same time, you start to dive deeper into the character, seeing a glimpse into his past, and that's where it stopped. I felt like it was unfulfilled. You saw a scene from his past, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, we're gonna learn more about the character as we go on. I think it was just not enough. I wanted more story to this character to really connect to him. On the other end, with Rebecca, I had no problem. She was great in this game, especially because, you see her already after Resident Evil 1, and she also appeared in the movies, in 2 movies, I think. Death Island and Damnation, I'm not sure. But anyways, you get enough of Rebecca's character altogether. In Billy, this is the only time we see him, and it was just not enough for me. I needed more. But the biggest problem is definitely the storage. I mean, that's the biggest problem of this game. And too bad, because it could have been, way higher. It's a scary game with good puzzles and definitely solid level design. But yeah, it got some issues which prevent it from going upper. Okay, let's go to some newer titles. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard and Village. 2 great games. Let's start with 7, of course. And that I said multiple times that it is my favorite game in the series, and kinda now I'm thinking that it's kinda on a tie with Resident Evil 2, I think. you know, when I'm reconsidering. But either way, you'll see where this is going. S tier all the way. For me, the scariest title in the game. I remember that moment going into the house for the first time, that seeing that darkness, that all black room, all shadow, and you're just stepping in terrified. I'll never forget that feeling. This game terrified every single bit of me, and I do say that as a compliment for sure, don't get me wrong, that's just amazing. Also, I want to address the great villains. While I like Ethan Winters a lot, I think in 7 and in 8, Ethan is not what makes the game. Like other games, when the main protagonist, think about Jill, about Leon, about Chris, those are characters that makes the game. Ethan is not like that. What makes the game in 7 and in 8, it's the villains, the foes, and yeah, who you fight and who you struggle to defeat. I mean, the entire family, every single one of them, with his own craziness and his own atmosphere of scary vibes. Margaret, terrifying character. Facing her was such a nightmare. And it's a horror game, so it's supposed to be like that. It was just brilliant. And, you know, Evelyn, and the Mega My Seed story and all that. Just Resident Evil 7, it's such a fantastic, phenomenal horror game all the way through. One of my favorite scenes, one of my top 5 scenes in the entire series probably would be waking up to the dinner party. With the family. Welcome to the family, son. He's not eating it, Jack. All those lines. I mean, I'll never forget it. And again, just like I said about Revelations 2, just talking about this game, it kind of makes me want to play it all over again. I just miss it. It was 10 out of 10 for me, guys. Resident Evil 7, it's a 10 out of 10 game, and I dare you to disagree. Kidding, you can disagree, it's okay. And lastly, Resident Evil Village. Resident Evil Village managed to do a lot of good things like Resident Evil 7, but unlike 7, it was not perfect, so I'm taking it to A tier. And I think that Resident Evil Village, a fantastic game that brought, again, the story is not about Ethan, it's about the villains. And again, that theme of every single villain got his own unique abilities and his own vibe. And it's like every single foe in those games, in those 2 games, it's like its own game, like separate from the others, like its own rules, its own vibes. It just, every single foe is just so special. And of course, just thinking about those characters, thinking about Lady Dimitrescu, House Beneviento, Mother Miranda, everyone got his own touch, and it's just such an amazing game filled with variety. But the reason it's not an S tier, it's because felt to me the combination between action and survival horror. So okay, if Resident Evil 7 is survival horror altogether, Resident Evil Village, it's a combination, I feel, between survival horror and action game. In general, it's okay. I'm fine with that, but the reason I'm mentioning it as a negative thing because it kinda fell apart for me in the section with Chris at the end. Now, Chris is a character that I love very much, and bringing Chris to the game, I was so down for it, I was happy about it a lot. But what happened when you start playing it as Chris, right at the end, it felt to me like, I don't know, something went off track here. It felt so different in a weird way, and I could not feel too comfortable in it. I mean, I did enjoy it, but it was strange. The contrast between playing as Ethan and then playing as Chris was too different. It's okay to have variety. It's okay to create something that is different within the game and actually have multiple type of styles within one game, but diving into Chris's shoes felt too drastic of a change for me. Don't get me wrong, it's still a super great game, that's why it's an A tier, but what I'm mentioning here is the reason why I cannot get it to S tier, why it's only close but not up there. So there you go, there you have it. No games in D or E, it's still a Resident Evil series, and I'm such a huge fan of this series. I'm in love with every single game here, even games that go to C. Those are great games for me. You have to understand, I'm struggling to get those on C because I'm such a Resident Evil fan. I enjoy every single title, and I'm just so thankful for what Capcom has done here. By the way, I'm guessing that while you agree with me on some of those things I did, you probably disagree with me in a lot of things and maybe even angry with me, but let's keep it civil. Let me know in the comments. I mean, it's okay to disagree. I would love to hear what you think. Agree or disagree, let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. And also stay tuned for next week because we have another tier list video, but this time it's going to be a tier list of Resident Evil characters. Again, Resident Evil, but not games, but characters. Tier list of Resident Evil characters. It will be fun because I enjoyed this one actually. And yeah, in general, if you like this video, let me know if you want to see more of this type of videos, because I do consider, let's see how it works. If people watch it and like it, then yeah, for sure I'll do more of those. Yeah, so that will be it. And thank you very much for watching. I'll see you soon.